Well, today's federal budget is the first under the new Liberal NDP agreement, a deal that exists on a guiding principle of no surprises, according to the Prime Minister's office. So on that note, is he surprised? NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh joins us now. Mr. Singh, thank you so much for joining us toward the tail end of what is a very busy day. Thank you for your time. So thank you. So let's start with this. Your party, Mr. Singh, had a heads up as to what was coming. You got dental care in this, but did this budget meet your expectations on NDP priorities?
Well, we looked at this minority government and said, how can we get help to people? People told us, go to Ottawa, deliver the help that we need. And we did that. We used our power to get dental care, starting with kids under 12 who need it most. That's going to happen in this budget. We also fought to make sure people who are struggling to find housing would get help. And we were able to achieve that with a significant increase in the amount of funding for housing and a change in the definition of what is affordable, which is going to be a game changer. It's going to make sure that when builds are happening, when new construction happens, that is supported with federal dollars, it actually goes to housing that is truly affordable. And I give the example of the previous definition under the Liberals would mean that affordable was $2,250 in Montreal. With this new definition, it drops affordable down to $967. So we really reduced the cost of housing for people, and the types of buildings that are going to be constructed have to meet that. Before, it was 20% of those units had to be affordable. Now it's 40%. So we doubled the units and significantly lowered the cost for families. So it's a big change.
Yeah, so I know that changing what is included in affordable housing and that language was one of your priorities, but another one was, Mr. Singh, was Pharmacare. I recognize the Liberal NDP deal says by the end of 2023. However, we are still in a pandemic here. There are a number of studies that show that having Pharmacare would create a huge ripple effect in terms of health care when we take a look at people's health, hospitalizations, of course, drugs and medication. Why next year? How are you not concerned that it was not included in this budget when it seems like this is a real issue in the sixth wave?
It is very important. We believe in having a universal pharmacare program. We would have delivered it a lot faster. In the agreement, though, it was outlined as something that would come in terms of legislation for next year. So dental care was this year with the first step, children under 12. Next year, according to our agreement, we fought to make sure pharmacare would come forward. So this would not have happened without us. It's not in this budget. We had envisioned that. We had envisioned it for next year's budget or next year's legislative schedule. And we know that we wanted to be prudent. We wanted to make sure that we were responsible, and we phased in our program. So that's the first step is dental care. The next step next year will be Pharmacare.
Why was dental care first for you as a priority as opposed to Pharmacare in terms of the deal you worked out?
We wanted to see something concrete. And when we speak to people, I spoke with lots of different families, and I heard really heartbreaking stories about people not being able to get their teeth looked after. One story in particular, I met Adam, and Adam shared with me, he's a dad, he loves his kids, he's got 2 kids that are young, they still have their baby teeth, but they need dental work. And so he's got to make this impossible choice, and he kind of felt a bit ashamed sharing it with me that I'm worried, I'm thinking maybe I just wait till their adult teeth come in and I don't spend money that I don't have on their baby teeth. But he felt really bad. He's like, I love my kids. I want to give them the best, but I don't have the money. So we know that dental care is something practical. It's something real and tangible in people's lives. So we wanted to start there as a new expansion, the biggest new expansion of our public healthcare system in a generation. So we started with dental care.
Okay, so we can anticipate the Pharmacare in the 2023 budget. Want to talk about home ownership, of course, or I should say housing affordability, an NDP priority, of course, really a priority for everyone in government. This foreign home owners ban for 2 years. So this is something, of course, that came out in the budget today. It's something that interim Conservative leader Candice Bergen says her party supports. I imagine clearly because you support the housing aspect of this budget that you support it as well. But I'm a bit perplexed as to why. The number of foreign homes here in this province, for example, it's only about 2% of homes in Ontario that are foreign owned. It doesn't appear this is going to have an impact, or the impact will be minimal. Why is that so important? Why is that something that came out as kind of a priority here, as opposed to, the supply issues or something more concrete and tangible?
Well, for us, we really focused on the definition and money for housing. This is something that the Liberals campaigned on. We agree with it. We think that it does pose a risk in increasing the cost of housing. It does drive up the cost. It's something that affects people in BC a lot. But we put our attention on changing the definition of affordability so it's truly affordable. We put our attention on for families that need help the most. We included in the budget, because it was a part of our agreement, a $500 increase to the Canada Housing Benefit. That's going to go to 1.2 million Canadians who need it most. And we also increased the amount of funding that's going to go into building homes. So the target's going to be about 100,000 homes built. We, of course, wanted 500,000, 500,000, but this is still a really big step forward. There's other measures around ending blind bidding and other measures that we support around giving people a little extra help in their purchase of their first home. But our focus really was the definition of affordability, making sure that builds have more affordable homes and units built into those builds, and having more money in place for people who need it most.
So that number I was sharing, so homes here in Ontario that are foreign owned, Mr. Singh, only 2.2%. But here in the city of Toronto, we have a lot of renters. The majority of units here in the city of Toronto are actually apartments and condos, and the majority of people occupying those units are renters, according to numbers from the city of Toronto. Your plan, Mr. Singh, back when we had the election back in the autumn, you were going to give $5,000 a year if an NDP government was elected to renters to be able to pay their rent. But in a city like ours here in Toronto, where the majority of people are renters, it doesn't seem this budget does anything for them.
Well, what it's going to do is we're putting a significant dollars that we've attached to building more affordable rental units. And we've changed the definition of affordability, so it's truly affordable. So when people in Toronto will actually get something that's 80% of what the average market value is. So significantly dropping the cost. It's going to help lots of people out. And so that's the real focus for people in Toronto, is to see more units built that are going to meet that definition of affordability. And that is a big step forward. It would not have happened but for New Democrats being there to push for this, and it's going to make a big difference.
The dental plan is something that's more imminent. When we look at housing, this is a long-term plan. Would you agree, with what Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland says, that this is a realistic budget? No one's going to wave a wand, and then here in Toronto, you could have the home you want and afford it in the community that you want. The idea is to eliminate barriers to home ownership for people. Is that how you feel about this? I mean, this is sort of a long-term plan toward home ownership for people.
I feel we can be much more aggressive. And if we were in a New Democrat government, as Prime Minister, I would actually go a lot more aggressively. I think there's two real concerns. One, there are pressures that are driving up the cost of housing. We think about property flipping. We think about other commodification of housing. And then the second piece is absolutely the supply side. And the supply side, we need to invest massively in cooperative housing, not-for-profit housing, in building more homes that people can call their own, that they don't have to worry about. They don't have to worry about a landlord evicting them. They don't have to worry about not being able to afford it. So there's got to be more options, more supply, but also dealing with those pressures that are driving up the cost. I would take that more aggressively and more seriously. And a New Democrat government, once we form government, will do that.
Okay, so I get, Mr. Singh, you're pretty satisfied overall with some of these elements in the budget, particularly the NDP priorities. But a big priority, of course, is the planet. And we heard from the IPCC report, as you know well, a few days ago, that we are failing the planet on climate change and climate action. It is a file of shame, it was called. You are deeply concerned about this, but you will still then support this budget, considering it was just, a few days ago, the feds approved an offshore oil project, days after the IPCC begged countries around the world to say no to oil and gas. So you're still supporting this overall? How does that work?
Well, we are absolutely opposed to the approach that the government is doing when it comes to the environment, the approach of increasing fossil fuel subsidies. We campaigned to end the public investment into the fossil fuel sector. We think that public money should be used for workers, should be used to invest in clean energy. So we are very strongly opposed to that approach. We had an opportunity in this minority government to help people. And so we are going to make sure people get dental care, get help for housing, and we're going to continue to oppose the government on things that are hurting people. This is not a New Democrat budget. This is New Democrats using our power to get people the help they need. A New Democrat would not have increased subsidies to the fossil fuel sector, would have invested more in people, in jobs, and in clean energy. That's the Liberal government's decision. We're going to oppose that. And we certainly heard Canadians tell us we don't want another election. We don't want to be plunged into another weeks and weeks of having to worry about who's voting and where do we go in terms of who's going to be governing. We wanted to get to work because that's Canadians, what they told us to do. And we're delivering on real meaningful help that's going to make people's lives a lot better.
Okay, we got to go, and I understand you have a busy evening. NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh, thank you so much for your time tonight, and as always, thanks for your time.
My pleasure. My honor to be here.